Hi. Welcome to Luna Listens to Books channel. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe. Now the story begins. He broke me first, shattered me into pieces I thought I'd never put back together. But now, I'm standing at the ruins of the life he tried to destroy, and this time, I'm the one in control. Duke Trayson was once the man I feared most, the ruthless businessman who thought he could own me. He took everything from me, left scars too deep to heal, and yet, fate had a twisted way of bringing us back together. This time, I'm not the helpless woman he once tormented. I've rebuilt myself, piece by piece, and now, I hold the power to ruin him. But revenge isn't as simple as I imagined. With secrets unraveling, betrayals cutting deeper than any wound, and a child caught in the crossfire, I start to wonder, can I truly escape him? Or have I become part of the very darkness I once swore to destroy? This is my story. A war of power, a game of survival, and a battle between love and hate. He may have broken me first, but I will be the one to end him. Pain exploded across my back as Elle slammed onto the cold marble floor. The impact rattled through my spine, a sharp sting spreading through my body like wildfire. My vision blurred, the chandelier above me spinning in dizzying circles. A strangled groan escaped my lips as I forced myself to breathe through the pain. I had barely registered what had happened when I heard the sound of high-pitched, exaggerated sobs from the top of the staircase. That little devil. I pushed myself up, gritting my teeth against the ache. My gaze snapped upward, and there he was, Lucas Trayson. The 8-year-old menace stood at the top of the stairs, sniffling dramatically, his small fists rubbing at his tearless eyes. He looked innocent, but I knew better. That kid was a walking disaster, and judging by the smug flicker in his gaze before it quickly vanished, I knew this was his doing. "You little shit," I hissed under my breath, my nails digging into the cold floor as I steadied myself. Lucas gasped, his small mouth parting in exaggerated betrayal. And then, like the manipulative little brat he was, he let out a deafening wail. "Daddy Eddie." His cries echoed through the mansion, his voice trembling as he pointed a chubby little finger at me. Mommy cursed at me. My stomach dropped. Shit. Heavy footsteps pounded down the hall. Duke Trayson. Lucas' father. My soon-to-be husband. The man I was deceiving. I barely had time to school my expression before Duke appeared, his towering frame filling the doorway. His piercing blue eyes darted between me and Lucas, his brows furrowing in suspicion. "What's going on?" His voice was deep, laced with authority. Lucas hiccuped dramatically. She got mad at me, Daddy. She called me bad words. Lying little bastard." I felt my pulse pound in my temples as I swallowed down my frustration, slipping into character. Soft. Gentle. Demure. Just like Brittany. I lowered my gaze, biting my lip like a guilty little lamb. "It's nothing, Duke," I murmured, my voice small and fragile. Lucas was playing a prank. I just got startled. I didn't mean to scare him. Lucas sniffled, selling his performance. Duke exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand down his face. "Lucas, go to your room." Lucas pouted, stomping his little feet as he turned and disappeared down the hall. I waited until he was gone before releasing the breath I had been holding. My body tensed as Duke's eyes landed on me again. His gaze searched mine, scanning my face as if he were trying to decipher a puzzle. I forced a soft smile. It really was just a misunderstanding. A long beat of silence. And then, finally, Duke sighed. "Be more careful next time." I nodded, my heart still hammering as he turned and walked away. It wasn't the first time I had to lie my way out of a situation like this. And it sure as hell wouldn't be the last. Because I wasn't Brittany Arkinson, I was Mia. Her twin sister. And I was living her life. Brittany Arkinson should have been standing here. She should have been the one preparing to marry Duke, smiling at socialites, playing the perfect stepmother. But Brittany was in a coma. She had been for months, hidden away in a private hospital under our father's care. And me? I was the replacement. At first, I fought against it. I wasn't like her. Brittany was delicate, graceful, obedient. I was wild, reckless, untamed. A woman like me had no place in Duke Trayson's world. But my father had made it clear. You have to keep pretending, Mia. After a few days, I had stormed into Brittany's hospital room the moment I got the text. Come to the hospital. There's good news and bad news. When I saw her awake, her frail body propped against crisp white pillows, my heart soared. Finally, I could stop this nightmare. But then, my father had pulled me aside, his expression unreadable. She doesn't remember anything, he said, his voice cold and firm. My blood ran cold. What? She has amnesia. I took a staggering step back. No. No way. The wedding is in 2 weeks, he continued, his gaze pinning me in place. Duke Trayson is the only thing keeping us from bankruptcy. If this marriage doesn't happen, we lose everything. I wanted to scream. To run. To burn everything to the ground. But the look in his eyes told me I had no choice. And now, here I was. Standing in a grand cathedral, drowning in lace and pearls, walking down an aisle toward a man who thought I was someone else. The scent of fresh roses filled the air, thick and suffocating. Hundreds of eyes were on me, watching, waiting. Duke stood at the altar, his broad shoulders rigid, his icy blue gaze locked onto mine. He looked perfect. Too perfect. And I hated that my heart reacted to him. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to be here. The priest's voice drifted through the cathedral, but I barely heard it over the roaring in my ears. This was a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. But there was no turning back. And then, the words that sealed my fate fell from the priest's lips. You may now kiss the bride. My breath hitched. Duke turned to me. His expression softening. His hands reached out. This was it. I had lied my way to this moment. And now I had to kiss him. Loud shouts erupted from outside the church. My eyes widened as muffled chaos stirred beyond the grand doors. A rally. A protest. On my wedding day. But why? And then just as Duke's lips brushed against mine, a loud gunshot rang through the air. I barely had time to react before Duke's lips crashed against mine. My breath caught in my throat as his firm grip settled on my waist, pulling me closer. His lips were warm, demanding, yet controlled, as if he were claiming what was already his. My entire body tensed, my hands hovering midair, unsure whether to push him away or play my part. I chose the latter. Slowly, I placed my hands on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath my trembling fingers. The heat from his body seeped through his crisp suit, making my skin prickle. The cheers from the crowd grew louder, their applause ringing in my ears, drowning out the frantic thoughts racing through my mind. This was it. I had sealed my fate. Just as Duke pulled away, a loud commotion erupted outside the church doors. My heart lurched. The muffled sound of angry shouts grew louder, overlapping with the excited murmurs of the guests. I turned my head instinctively, trying to see what was happening beyond the stained glass windows. Then, a gunshot. A deafening crack that made the chandeliers tremble. Screams followed, panicked and urgent. Guests started shifting uneasily in their seats, some already standing, whispering in alarm. I barely had time to process what was happening before my feet moved on their own. I stepped away from Duke, my pulse thundering as I made my way toward the entrance, but before I could take another step, a firm grip closed around my wrist. Duke. Don't, he said, his voice low, filled with authority. I turned to him, my pulse hammering against my ribs. Someone just fired a gun, Duke. I need to It's dangerous, he cut me off. Stay here. His sharp blue eyes locked onto mine, his expression unreadable. He didn't look afraid. He didn't even look surprised. That sent a chill down my spine. Before I could demand an explanation, my father appeared beside us, his face dark with something unreadable. He barely acknowledged Duke before gripping my arm and pulling me aside, leading me toward the shadowed corner of the church. We need to talk, he muttered under his breath. I barely kept up with his pace. Dad, what the hell is going on? He exhaled sharply, glancing toward the chaos outside before looking back at me. Those people outside, they're not just protesters, me. They're grieving families. Farmers. I frowned. Farmers? Their loved ones were killed, he said quietly. And word on the streets is that Duke Trayson is responsible. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? My father didn't respond. Instead, he let his words hang between us, heavy and suffocating. Duke. A murderer. It didn't make sense. I turned my head slowly, my gaze landing on Duke, who was still standing near the altar, watching me with a gaze that was impossible to decipher. His posture remained relaxed, unaffected by the uproar outside. As if this was nothing new. As if he had expected this. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Before I could press for more answers, the doors of the church shook violently as something banged against them from the outside. Guests gasped, some already rushing toward the exits. Security guards shouted orders, their guns drawn as they pushed back against the crowd. We need to leave, my father said urgently. I barely turned to face him before another familiar hand wrapped around my wrist. Duke. We're going to the rooftop, he said simply. I stared at him, my mind still reeling. Duke, are you even going to explain what's happening? Why are people saying you? It doesn't matter right now. His grip tightened slightly. You're my wife now. That means your safety comes first. I didn't get the chance to argue. Duke was already pulling me toward a hidden staircase behind the altar. My father followed closely behind, his expression grim. The steps were steep, spiraling higher and higher, and my wedding dress made it even harder to move. By the time we reached the rooftop, my legs were burning, my breath coming in shallow gasps. But all of that disappeared when I saw the helicopter. Its blades were already spinning, slicing through the cold night air. Several of Duke's men were stationed nearby, their hands resting over their weapons, their gazes sharp as they scanned the perimeter. Duke wasted no time guiding me toward the open door. Get in. I hesitated. Britnev. His voice was firm. Now. I swallowed hard before stepping inside, settling onto the leather seat beside my father. Duke climbed in after me, nodding toward the pilot. Within seconds, the helicopter lifted off, the ground below shrinking as we soared into the sky. Through the window, I could see the mob gathered outside the church, their voices drowned beneath the roar of the blades. Some were crying. Some were furious. But all of them had one thing in common. They wanted Duke Trayson to pay for something. And I needed to find out what. Days passed, and my new life as Mrs. Trayson felt like a carefully rehearsed lie. Duke was gone most of the time, locked in meetings or vanishing for hours without a word. When we did cross paths, his gaze always lingered on me a second too long, as if he was waiting for something. But what? I forced myself to play the role of the perfect wife. The perfect mother. Every night, I sat beside Luca's bed, reading bedtime stories in the same soft tone Brittany used. Every morning, I smiled. Over breakfast, watching the little boy eat. While Duke watched me. But beneath my mask, I was investigating. I reached out to Faye, my personal assistant, the only person who will find out the truth. Find out everything you can about Duke, I whispered into my phone one evening, locked inside the bathroom. I don't care how dangerous it is. Just do it. Faye hesitated. Mia, are you sure? I need answers. My grip tightened around the phone. If I was going to be trapped in this marriage, I needed to know who I was married to. But before I could get those answers, everything changed. One reckless, heated night shattered the fragile walls I had built around myself. Duke came home late, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up. His sharp blue gaze locked onto mine as he entered our dimly lit bedroom. Something about him felt different that night. More intense. More dangerous. I should have left. I should have walked away. But I didn't. His fingers brushed against my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. His hands found my waist, pulling me against him, his breath warm against my ear. "You're my wife now," he murmured. "Start acting like it." I let him kiss me. And for the first time, I kissed him back. The next morning, my body ached in ways I never thought possible. But something else had changed. The nausea came first. Then the dizziness. At first, I thought it was just stress. But when the symptoms didn't go away, I knew. I drove myself to the doctor, sitting in a cold, sterile room as they ran the tests. And when the doctor finally spoke, my world crumbled. "Congratulations, Mrs. Trayson. You're pregnant." I stared at her, my mind blank. Pregnant. With Duke's child. This wasn't supposed to happen. I stumbled out of the clinic, my breath coming in short gasps. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and called my father. "I need an abortion," I whispered the second he picked up. Silence. Then, his cold voice. "That's not an option, Mia." Tears burned in my eyes. "Dad, I can't." "You have to. Brittany still has amnesia. The marriage needs to hold. And this child will make it stronger." The line went dead. I stood there, the weight of my fate crushing me. I had lied my way into this marriage. Now, I was trapped by it. The weight of the doctor's words clung to me like a suffocating fog. Pregnant. With Duke Trayson's child. My stomach twisted violently as I stumbled out of the clinic, my legs unsteady beneath me. The cold evening air did little to cool the heat rising in my chest, my fingers trembling as I reached for my phone. The moment my father answered, my voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I need an abortion." Silence. A long, suffocating silence that made my throat tighten. Then, my father spoke, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. "That's not an option, Mia." I gripped the phone tighter. "Dad, I can't." "You will," he interrupted, his tone final. "Brittany still has amnesia. The marriage needs to hold. And this child will make it stronger." The line went dead. I stood there, my entire body numb. There was no way out. For weeks, I buried the truth deep inside me, forcing myself to continue the charade. Every morning, I smiled at Duke over breakfast, ignoring the way his eyes studied me a little too closely. Every night, I tucked Lucas into bed, pretending I was his mother, pretending that my own life hadn't spiraled into something unrecognizable. But in the silence of my room, when the world was still and I was left alone with my thoughts, the panic crept in. I was carrying the child of a man I barely knew. A man who might be a murderer. And if I wasn't careful, he would find out that I wasn't Brittany. I needed a plan. The only person I could trust was Faye. One evening, as the mansion lay in eerie silence, I locked myself in the bathroom and dialed her number. "Mia?" Faye's voice was hushed. Cautious. "I need you to dig deeper," I whispered, my fingers clutching the edge of the sink. "Find out everything you can about Duke Trayson. Every deal, every enemy, every secret. I need to know what I married into." Faye hesitated. "Mia, are you sure? You're already playing with fire." "I don't have a choice," I murmured. "I need to know the truth." A heavy sigh. "Then, I'll do it." As I ended the call, a voice from behind sent a sharp jolt through my spine. "You're not my real mommy." My breath caught. I turned slowly, my heart pounding against my ribcage. Lucas stood by the doorway, his small frame barely illuminated by the dim light of the hallway. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those wide, knowing eyes, bore into mine like he had unraveled my entire existence. A shaky smile forced its way onto my lips. "Lucas, what are you talking about?" He frowned, his little hands curling into fists. "Mommy never gives me milk. Because I'm allergic." Cold dread slithered down my spine. I had given him a glass of milk that morning. Shit. I took a careful step forward, my voice soft. I forgot, sweetheart. It won't happen again." But Lucas only took a step back, his lip trembling. Without another word, he turned and ran down the hallway. Straight to Duke. My pulse skyrocketed as I chased after him, my bare feet hitting the cold floor. "Lucas, wait." But it was too late. Lucas threw open the door to Duke's study, his voice shrill. "Daddy. Mommy gave me milk." Duke, who had been sitting at his desk, immediately stood, his sharp blue eyes snapping to me. His expression darkened, unreadable. "What?" His voice was dangerously low. I opened my mouth, struggling to find the right words. "Duke, Come here," he ordered. My legs felt heavy as I stepped forward, my hands clammy. The air in the room had shifted, thick with something suffocating. "Why did you give him milk?" Duke asked, his tone eerily calm. I swallowed hard. I wasn't thinking. It slipped my mind. His gaze didn't waver. "Slipped your mind?" The way he said it sent chills down my spine. "You're his mother, Brittany." His voice dropped lower, his tone razor sharp. "You don't forget something like that." His words coiled around me like a snake. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "I made a mistake, Duke." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in one swift motion, he grabbed my wrist, yanking me closer. His grip was tight, his fingers digging into my skin. "You can fool everyone else," he murmured, his breath hot against my cheek. "But you will never fool me." My stomach twisted. His grip tightened. "If I ever find out that you're lying to me, Brittany," he leaned closer, his lips brushing against my ear. "I will kill you." A blinding fury erupted inside me. Without thinking, my free hand flew up, slapping him hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room. Duke's head tilted slightly from the impact. When he looked back at me, his gaze was unreadable. Then, to my shock, he smiled. It wasn't a smile of amusement. It was something darker. Something that made the hairs on my arms rise. He released my wrist and stepped back, his smirk lingering as he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart racing. For weeks, I felt his eyes on me. Watching. Waiting. Testing me. But I refused to break. Until one night, everything fell apart. My phone rang in the dead of night, the screen flashing with Faye's name. I answered immediately, my voice hushed. "Faye, what is it?" "Mia," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I found something." A chill swept over me. "What?" Faye hesitated. "Then, Duke Trayson is part of a mafia group." I felt my breath leave my body. "Mafia?" "They don't just kill random people," she continued. "They target powerful figures. People who threaten them." My hands turned ice cold. Faye's voice dropped even lower. "And Mia, your father is next on their list." The phone nearly slipped from my grip. Before I could process what she had just said, I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of cold metal pressing against my temple. My entire body froze. A deep, steady voice whispered from behind me. "Why are you investigating me, Brittany?" "Duke." The coon in his hand was pressed firmly against the side of my head. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to remain steady. Duke, I don't. Don't lie to me. His voice was eerily calm. Who are you talking to? My heart pounded against my ribs. The click of the gun's safety disengaging sent a sickening wave of dread through me. Tell me the truth, Duke murmured, his lips inches from my ear. Right now. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, in a desperate move, I blurted out the only thing that could save me. I'm pregnant. Everything stopped. Duke's grip loosened. His breath hitched. Slowly, I turned to face him, my pulse hammering. I'm pregnant, Duke. How could I not be, Brittany? Silence. Then, without warning, he grabbed me. Before I could react, his arms wrapped around me in a crushing embrace. For a brief moment, I thought I had one. But then, something hard slammed against the side of my head. Pain exploded. The world spun violently. I collapsed. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, my wrists were bound. The air was damp. Cold. The scent of mold filled my nose. I was in a basement. And then, from the speaker mounted in the corner, Duke's voice filled the room. His tone was calm. Controlled. Good thing I found out that my lovely wife has a twin. I sucked in a sharp breath. No. No, no, no. You should have told me that she has amnesia. He knew. He finally knew. For 3 days, I was locked away. 3 days of hunger gnawing at my stomach, my throat dry and raw, my body aching from lying on the cold basement floor. 3 days of my mind running in circles, trying to figure out a way out of this mess. Duke was testing me. Starving me. Punishing me. All because I couldn't answer his one question. Where is Brittany? I had tried, I had faked the hurt in my voice, the shock, the frustration. But I hesitated for 1 second too long, and that was all it took for Duke to decide I was lying. And now, I was paying for it. But my chance at freedom came from the unlikeliest source. Daddy, Mommy has to come to my school. Lucas' little voice echoed through the cold stone walls of the basement. My stomach clenched at the sound of his small fists knocking on the heavy door. Lucas, not now, Duke's voice came, calm but firm. But she has to come. Lucas insisted. It's a parent meeting, and all the other mommies and daddies will be there. A heavy silence stretched before the lock clicked, and the door creaked open. Light spilled in, blinding me for a moment. And then I saw him. Duke stood tall in the doorway, his broad frame backlit by the chandelier. From the hallway, his blue eyes settled on me, sharp and unreadable. He said nothing, only studying me, taking in my slumped posture, the dark circles under my eyes. He was looking for weakness. I wouldn't give it to him. I pushed myself up, steadying my breath, and lifted my chin. He exhaled through his nose, turning to his men. She goes. But she's not alone. Oh, course. I had no illusions that I'd be free. The school meeting was nothing but a ridiculous event where the parents of privileged children gathered to brag. I barely paid attention, my focus only on one thing: finding an opportunity to send a message to Faye. Duke didn't come. He told us that the school knew that he was busy handling business. That's good. But I never got the chance to contact Faye. By the time I stepped back into the mansion, Duke was waiting. His expression was unreadable, his suit immaculate, his arms crossed as I walked through the grand entrance. Did you enjoy your time outside? He asked smoothly. A sliver of unease curled in my stomach. 2 of his men grabbed my arms. My stomach dropped. Duke, please take her back. The last thing I saw before the door slammed shut was Lucas' confused face. The next day, everything changed. The door to the basement creaked open, and Duke stepped inside, but this time, he wasn't empty-handed. A plastic bag landed at my feet. bread, fruit, and water. I stared at it, my vision swimming with hunger. He had never brought me food before. My cracked lips parted. "Why, you're pregnant," he said flatly. Ice slid down my spine. So he had checked. The doctor's report must have confirmed it. Duke crouched in front of me, his gaze sharp. "That means you'll live." A slow, dangerous realization settled in my chest. I wasn't just a prisoner anymore. I was Carvina, his child. And that gave me power. Duke tilted his head slightly. "You'll keep this baby, Mia." "That's not a request." I swallowed. "Of course." Duke studied me for a moment longer before standing. And just like that, I was free. For now. The next few days felt surreal. Duke no longer locked me up. Instead, he watched me. But I noticed something else. He never raised a hand to me. Instead, he did things that unsettled me more than any slap could. He pulled my chair out at the dining table, guided me through doorways with a hand on my lower back, even placed his palm on my stomach absently like a real husband would. Like I was his wife. But I knew the truth. I wasn't his wife. I was his substitute. And if I wanted to escape, I needed to use this pregnancy against him. Lucas was setting up another one of his pranks at the top of the stairs. I saw the glint of the string stretched across the step, the tiny marbles carefully scattered just enough to make me trip. But this time, I didn't fall. This time, I saw it before I stepped into it. I stopped at the last second, sidestepping the trap easily. "Nice try," I muttered, brushing past Lucas. Lucas' eyes widened. His little hands clenched into fists, his face scrunching up in frustration. He had been expecting me to fall. Expecting me to cry for Duke. But I didn't. And when I turned to walk away, he ran. Straight to Duke. "Daddy." "Mommy didn't fall." I froze. My stomach clenched as I heard Duke's measured footsteps approach. "What do you mean, Lucas?" Duke's voice was deceptively smooth. Lucas pouted. "Mommy always falls. She always cries. She didn't this time. She just walked away." I didn't dare move. The silence stretched. Then, without warning, Duke's palm slammed onto the dining table. Lucas flinched. I gasped, stepping forward instinctively. Duke's voice was cold, controlled. "Go to your room." Lucas hesitated, stunned. "Daddy." "Now, Lucas." The little boy looked at me, then at Duke, then at me again before running away. My breath was stuck in my throat. Duke had never scolded him before. He turned back to me, his blue eyes dangerous. "You're being careful now," he murmured. "That's good." Then, he leaned down, his lips brushing against my ear as he whispered, "But tell me, Mia, what else are you hiding?" I barely breathed until he walked away. But one thing was clear. The pregnancy had changed everything. Late that night, I finally slipped into Duke's office. The scent of whiskey and leather lingered in the air. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the city lights bleeding through the windows. I moved fast, pulling open the second drawer of his desk. "MV non-weeks." The words clung to my mind like thick smoke, suffocating and inescapable. "Your father has been missing for weeks." I sat there, gripping the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My breath came in uneven gasps, my pulse hammering against my ribs. Faye's voice was urgent, filled with something dark and heavy. "Mia, we need to move fast. If Duke was behind this, you could be next." I swallowed hard, my gaze flickering. Toward the locked office door. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, pressing against my chest with suffocating weight. I needed to get out of here. "Duke knows who I am, Faye," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "He knows I'm Mia." A sharp intake of breath from the other line. "Then we don't have much time." I'll help you, but you have to be careful. You need to act like nothing is wrong until we find a way out. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I will. For the next few days, I did exactly that. I played the role of the innocent, obedient wife, smiling when Duke looked at me, nodding when he spoke, resting my hand over my growing stomach as if I had accepted my place by his side. But beneath the surface, my mind was working, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to escape. And then, finally, I created my own opportunity. That morning, I made sure to look distracted, clumsy. As I descended the grand staircase, I faked a misstep, letting out a sharp gasp before tumbling down the steps. I twisted my body just right so that I wouldn't get truly hurt, only enough to make it look believable. The moment my body hit the floor, I let out a pained cry. Lucas was at the top of the stairs watching wide-eyed. Before he could react, I turned to him with mock pain in my expression. "Lucas," I gasped. "Why did you do that?" The accusation made his face twist in horror. I didn't. Mommy, But it was too late. Duke stormed into the room, his expression dark as his eyes flicked between me and his son. "Daddy, I didn't do anything. I swear." Lucas pleaded. I pressed my hand to my stomach as if in pain, lowering my head slightly. "Duke. I almost our baby," I let my voice break at the end. That was all it took. Duke's fury snapped toward Lucas. "What the hell were you thinking?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. Lucas flinched. "I didn't." "Enough," Duke said, his tone firm. "Go to your room. Now." Tears welled in Lucas' eyes, but he didn't arc. He ran. A small, twisted satisfaction curled in my chest. It had worked. Duke turned to me, his expression softening just enough as he crouched beside me. "We're going to the hospital." "Perfect." Inside the hospital emergency room, the doctors and nurses moved around me, running tests, checking for broken bones. Duke paced near the bed, his phone in hand, speaking with someone in hushed tones. Then, after what felt like hours, his assistant called him. "The investors are here," she said. "They need you now." Duke's jaw clenched. He glanced at me, then at the doctor. "Stay with her. Make sure nothing happens to her." And just like that, he was gone. I waited until I was alone. Then, a nurse entered the room fully covered in a PPE suit, a face mask hiding her features. She closed the door behind her, moving swiftly toward me. And then, she pulled the mask down. It was Faye. "Let's go," she whispered urgently. She helped me out of the hospital gown, replacing it with a nurse's uniform she had hidden beneath her PPE. My hands trembled as I changed, my pulse hammering in my ears. We moved fast, walking through the hallways of the hospital as if I belonged, my head lowered, my heart pounding against my ribs. No one stopped us. By the time we reached the parking lot, a car was already waiting. I barely had time to breathe before I climbed inside. Faye got in after me, slamming the door shut as the driver pulled away from the hospital. We had made it. I was finally freer, so I thought. The moment we were far enough, Faye turned to me, her expression grim. "Mia," she said quietly. Something in her voice made my stomach twist. "Your father," Faye hesitated. "His body was found this morning." I stared at her. No, that wasn't possible. My heart slammed against my ribs. "What?" "He's dead, Mia," she whispered. "They killed him." Rage. Pure, consuming rage filled my chest, burning through my veins like fire. Duke did this. I wouldn't forgive him. And I wouldn't let him win. For the next few months, we lived on an isolated island, away from Duke's reach. Faye had arranged everything: a safe house, security, everything we needed to disappear. I spent my days waiting, planning. Until the baby came. A baby boy. I named him Dwayne Lopez. I used Faye's surname so that Duke couldn't track us. And when Faye asked me if I wanted to get rid of him, to make my escape easier, I shook my head. No, I whispered. He's my weapon. Faye frowned. Mia. Duke took everything from me, I said. One day, I'll take it all back. She didn't arc after that. We spent months building a life, adapting to the island, preparing for the next step. Until one night, everything shattered. The sharp crack of gunfire rang through the air. I bolted upright in bed, my pulse skyrocketing. Faye burst into the room, her eyes wide with alarm. Mia, she gasped. We're not alone. There's a war here? I asked. I covered my mouth when Faye simply nodded. Duke for sure. Come on. The first gunshot shattered the silence of the island like a crack of lightning. My heart seized. Then came another. Closer. I lunged for Dwayne's crib, scooping him into my arms as my breath came in ragged gasps. His tiny body stirred against me, his warm skin pressing into mine. He was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the danger closing in. Another gunshot. This time the sound tore through the window. Glass exploded around me, sharp fragments raining onto the floor. Mia. Faye's voice rang from the hallway, her footsteps pounding toward me. We have to go. I spun around just as she burst into the room, a gun clutched tightly in her hand. They found us, she gasped, her face pale in the dim light. No. That wasn't possible. We had been so careful. Duke shouldn't have been able to track us here. Unless. My stomach twisted. Someone had betrayed us. But now wasn't the time to think about that. We need to leave, Faye said, yanking open the closet. She grabbed a black duffel bag, throwing it onto the bed. Take whatever you need. We don't have much time. A third gunshot. This one hit the door. The wood splintered beside me. Dwayne whimpered in my arms. I clutched him tighter, my fingers trembling as I grabbed the bag. They're surrounding the house, Faye growled, peering through the shattered window. We can't use the front door. A metallic click echoed outside the house. My breath hitched. Then. A loud whoosh. Flames erupted from the other side of the house. Smoke billowed into the night sky. They're burning us out, Faye muttered. I could barely breathe. My pulse slammed against my ribs as panic clawed at my chest. Follow me, she ordered, gripping my wrist. There's another way out. She led me through the house, dodging the smoke pouring in from the hallway. The fire crackled and hissed, heat licking at my skin as we moved. By the time we reached the back door, the air was thick with smoke. Faye kicked it open. The fresh night air hit me like a slap, but there was no time to stop and breathe. Because they were waiting. A dark figure stepped out from the trees, a rifle in his hands. Faye fired first. The man barely had time to react before the bullet tore through his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Move, she barked, shoving me forward. I ran. Dwayne stirred against me, letting out a small, sleepy cry. I hushed him quickly, my lungs burning as I sprinted down the dirt path. Faye was right behind me, her gun still raised. More shadows emerged from the trees. I could hear them shouting, their voices cutting through the night. There, one of them yelled. Another gunshot. Faye shoved me just in time. The bullet barely missed, whizzing past my ear. We have to get to the boat, she gasped. Keep running. I didn't argue. The dock was just ahead. Almost there. Almost. A figure appeared in front of me, blocking my path. I skidded to a stop. Dwayne let out a wail. The man stepped closer, his gun pointed directly at me. There was no time to think. I did the only thing I could. I lunged forward, driving my knee up into his stomach. He staggered back with a grunt, his grip on the gun loosening. That was my chance. I grabbed the gun before he could recover, then pulled the trigger. The shot rang out. His body slumped onto the dirt. I barely had time to process what I'd done before Faye grabbed my arm. Keep moving. We reached the dock. A small motorboat rocked against the wooden planks. Faye jumped in first, starting the engine with a sharp yank. I followed, clutching Dwayne tightly as I collapsed onto the seat. The engine roared to life, the boat lurched forward. Gunfire erupted behind us. Bullets ripped through the water, missing us by inches. I held Dwayne against my chest, shielding him as best as I could. Faye gritted her teeth, steering the boat away from the island. The shoreline grew smaller and smaller. For a moment, I thought we had made it. Then, a massive explosion tore through the night. I turned just in time to see the house engulfed in flames. My stomach dropped. Everything we had built, everything we had left, was gone. I stared at the inferno, numb. Faye's voice snapped me out of it. They won't stop, she muttered, her hands gripping the wheel. They'll keep hunting us. I swallowed hard. I already knew that. This wasn't over. Not even close. I looked down at Dwayne. His small fingers curled around mine, his tiny chest rising and falling in soft breaths. I made a silent promise I would keep him safe. And I would make them pay. Whoever had betrayed us. Whoever had sent those men. I would find them. And I would burn their world to the ground. Days had passed, but the echoes of that gunfire still haunted me. Every night, I lay awake, gripping Dwayne against my chest, afraid that at any moment, Duke's men would storm the island and take everything away. Faye and I had managed to hold our ground, but paranoia had seeped into my bones. I tightened my hold on my son, whispering to him that I'd never let anyone take him from me. Not Duke. Not his empire. Not the monsters lurking in the shadows. Faye, ever the sharp one, had been reinforcing the island's security, setting up surveillance cameras, hidden weapons, and escape routes. She never spoke of her past, but I knew she had skills beyond what she let on. It made me wonder, how deep was she really into this world? After a few weeks, we finally started feeling secure again. But that peace didn't last long. One evening, while I was rocking Dwayne to sleep, Faye stormed inside our little cabin, her face pale and breath ragged. We have to go. Now, she hissed, slamming a small duffel bag onto the floor. Duke knows we're here. I felt my heartbeat stutter. How? She handed me a burner phone, the screen displaying a single text message from an unknown number, "Found you." My blood ran cold. I knew exactly who sent it. Duke Trayson. I didn't hesitate. I strapped Dwayne onto my chest, grabbed the emergency bag Faye had packed weeks ago, and followed her outside. The moment we stepped out, the sharp scent of the ocean hit me, but so did something else, the presence of unwelcome eyes watching us. Then, a gunshot rang through the air. Faye yanked me down just in time, shielding Dwayne and me with her body as bullets sprayed against the trees behind us. My ears rang as we scrambled through the jungle, the thick foliage swallowing us whole. The island that once felt like a haven had turned into a trap. We have to get to the boat, Faye panted, her hand gripping my arm in a vice-like hold. There's no other way off this island. But when we reached the docks, my stomach dropped. The boat was on fire. Flames licked at the wooden frame, the heat searing my face even from a distance. A dozen men stood at the shore, their weapons glinting under the moonlight. And then, I saw him. Duke Trayson. Standing at the center of it all, dressed in black, a smirk curling. His lips. Going somewhere, darling? I swallowed hard, my body trembling with both fear and rage. You have no right to call me that. He chuckled, shaking his head. Oh, Mia. I think you're forgetting who the real villain is here. Faye pulled out her gun, But before she could fire, one of Duke's men pressed a barrel against her temple. She froze. "Drop it," Duke ordered, his voice sharp as a blade. Faye hesitated. I knew she was calculating her options, but the odds were stacked against us. I stepped forward, placing a protective hand over Dwayne. "What do you want?" Duke took his time before answering, his eyes trailing over me, then to the baby in my arms. "I want my son." "No," I spat instantly, stepping back. "You don't get to claim him." His expression darkened. "You think you can keep him from me forever? That's cute." He turned to one of his men. "Take him." "No." I screamed as two men rushed forward. I kicked and fought, my heart racing as they grabbed my arms. Dwayne wailed, his tiny cries cutting through the chaos. "Faye." I called out, struggling against their grip. Faye snarled, twisting away from her captor long enough to fire her gun. The shot went straight through the man's skull. Blood splattered across the dock, and in the commotion, she lunged for me, yanking me free from the men's grip. I cradled Dwayne against me, running blindly into the night as bullets rained around us. We didn't stop running until we reached the cliffs. There was nowhere else to go. Below us, the waves crashed violently against the rocks. Duke's voice was calm as he stepped closer. "You can't escape this, Mia." I took a deep breath, holding Dwayne tighter. "Watch me." And with that, I jumped. The cold ocean swallowed us whole. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was a pair of unfamiliar hands dragging me from the water. Then, darkness took over. Days had passed since the harrowing ambush at the island, and the wounds, both physical and emotional, had yet to heal. The nightmares of that night still clung to me, the sound of gunfire echoing in my mind like a never-ending symphony of destruction. I could still feel the warmth of Faye's blood on my hands, the fear in her eyes before she collapsed. She had barely made it, and now, confined to a hospital bed in an undisclosed location, she was still fighting for her life. I had no time to grieve. Duke was out there, hunting me like prey, and I needed to stay one step ahead. I had spent the past few days strategizing, gathering resources, and preparing for the inevitable clash. I was no longer the woman he had once controlled. I was no longer a pawn in his twisted game. But fate had other plans. A knock on the door sent a shiver down my spine. I reached for the gun hidden under my pillow before cautiously approaching. The man standing on the other side was someone I hadn't expected to see: Arvin, one of Duke's closest men. My pulse quickened, and my grip on the gun tightened. "What the hell are you doing here?" I hissed, ready to pull the trigger if necessary. Arvin raised his hands in surrender, his expression unreadable. "I come in peace." I scoffed. "That's hard to believe." "I have information," he said, stepping forward. "About Duke. About what he's planning." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me not to trust him, but if there was a chance to get ahead of Duke, I had to take it. "Talk," I ordered, not lowering my gun. Arvin's gaze flickered to the room where Faye lay unconscious before he spoke. "Duke knows you're alive. And he's not just looking for you, he's looking for your son." My blood ran cold. My fingers trembled slightly against the gun. "How does he know?" "There's a mole in your circle," he revealed. "Someone close to you gave him information. He knows about Dwayne, and he wants him. Badly." Panic clawed at my chest. Dwayne was my everything, the one pure thing I had left in this world. If Duke got his hands on him. No. I wouldn't let that happen. "Who is the mole?" I demanded, stepping closer. Arvin hesitated. "I don't have a name yet. But I do know that Duke is planning something big. He's setting a trap. And he wants you to walk right into it." I narrowed my eyes. "Why are you telling me this? What's in it for you?" He exhaled sharply. "I owe you. You spared my life once. Consider this payback. But you need to move fast. If you don't, Duke will take everything from you. I stared at him for a long moment before nodding. Then we hit him first. Hours later, I found myself standing over a city skyline, the night air crisp against my skin. The rooftop meeting with Arvin had left me on edge, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow felt like a pair of eyes tracking my every move. Faye stirred in her bed when I returned, her weak voice barely above a whisper. Mia. I rushed to her side, gripping her hand. I'm here. You're safe. She gave me a faint smile, but pain flickered in her eyes. I heard what Arvin said. I nodded. We need to move. Duke knows about Dwayne. I can't let him take my son. Faye's fingers tightened around mine. Then you know what we have to do. I swallowed hard. We take the fight to him. A cold determination settled in my chest. I had spent too long running, too long being a victim. It was time to turn the tables. It was time for Duke to know fear. But before we could act, the room's door burst open, and in the dim light, a figure stood at the threshold. My heart stopped as I recognized the shadowed outline. Duke. He had found me. Did you really think you could hide from me forever, my love? Duke's voice was laced with amusement and menace, sending chills down my spine. Days had passed, but the echoes of gunfire still haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the bodies, heard the desperate cries. Faye and I had barely made it out alive, and now we were fugitives, forced to move from one safe house to another. The world outside had become a battlefield, and I was running. Out of places to hide. We found temporary shelter in a small, abandoned motel by the edge of a secluded forest. The walls were cracked, the air thick with dust, but it was safe for now. I held Dwayne close to my chest, feeling his tiny heartbeat against my skin. He was my only reason to keep going. Faye sat across from me, loading a gun, her face etched with determination. We can't keep running forever, Mia, she said, her voice low but firm. Duke won't stop hunting us. We need to take the fight to him. I nodded. I had no choice. If I kept running, Duke would always find me. He had eyes everywhere, money, power, everything I didn't. But what I had was a reason to fight, and that was stronger than anything he could throw at me. That night, I left Dwayne in Faye's care and made my way to the city, disguised in a hoodie and a wig. The streets buzzed with life, people moving around like they weren't living in a world ruled by monsters like Duke. I needed answers. I needed allies. And there was only one person who could give me both: an ex-mafia informant named Victor. Victor owned an underground gambling den, the kind where desperate men bet their lives away. I pushed through the thick cigarette smoke, my stomach churning at the sight of men flashing guns like they were playing cards. Mia, Victor greeted me with a knowing smirk. Or should I say, Mrs. Trayson? I clenched my fists. I need information. He chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Information comes at a price. I have money. Not that kind of price. His eyes darkened. I want something else. I swallowed hard. What? Victor leaned in, lowering his voice. I want Duke dead. I wasn't expecting that. Why? Let's just say he took something from me. I want revenge, and you're the only one who can get close enough to kill him. A lump formed in my throat. And if I agree? I'll give you everything you need to destroy him. I didn't hesitate. Deal. Victor handed me a flash drive. Everything's in there: his secret accounts, the people he's blackmailing, his biggest weaknesses. Use them wisely. I took the drive and left, my heart pounding. The moment I stepped outside, I knew I had made the right decision. Duke had taken everything from me: my freedom, my father, my identity. It was time to return the favor. But as I rounded the corner, I froze. A black SUV screeched to a halt. And before I could react, masked men jumped out, guns aimed straight at me. Mia Trayson, one of them sneered. Your husband wants you home. I turned to run, but they were faster. A needle pierced my neck, and within seconds, my vision blurred. The last thing I saw was the glint of a gun before everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a room I knew too well, Duke's mansion. The silk sheets, the towering chandelier, it was all the same. My wrists were tied to the bedposts, my body weak from whatever drug they had injected me with. The door creaked open, and then I saw him. Duke Trayson. My nightmare in the flesh. He walked in, a cruel smile on his lips. Welcome home, sweetheart. My body tensed. Go to hell. He chuckled, dragging a chair beside the bed. Oh, Mia. You still have that fire. That's why I liked you more than your sister. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? He tilted his head. You really thought Brittany just disappeared? Dread curled around my spine. Where is she? Duke leaned closer, his breath warm against my skin. She never left, Mia. She's been here all along. My stomach twisted. You're lying. He smirked. Am I? As if on cue, the door opened again, and my heart nearly stopped. Standing there, dressed in an elegant black gown, was my sister. Brittany. She was alive. And she was smiling. Brittany crossed her arms, tilting her head. Did you really think you could take my place, sister? Brittany's wide, unblinking eyes were locked onto mine, searching for any trace of deception. The tension in the air was suffocating, a thick cloud pressing down on both of us as we stood in that dimly lit room, the past and present colliding like a storm brewing in the distance. You think I'll let you take my place? Brittany's voice wavered, a mix of anger and desperation seeping through. After everything? After what Duke did to me? I exhaled sharply, stepping closer but keeping my voice level, steady. I'm not here to replace you, Brittany. I never was. Her hands balled into fists at her sides, her frail body trembling as she absorbed my words. Then what the hell is this? Why are you even here? I took a deep breath, my pulse hammering as I forced myself to lay it all out before her. Because this is bigger than us. This isn't about revenge or taking over your life. It's about ending Duke's control once and for all. And I need you with me to do that. She scoffed, shaking her head, but saw the way her resolve flickered. You don't understand. He'll never let either of us go. That's where you're wrong, I say firmly, stepping even closer. Because this time, we aren't running. We're fighting back. A silence stretched between us. She studied me, her features shifting between disbelief and cautious hope. Then, after what felt like an eternity, she whispered, How? I laid out the plan carefully, ensuring every detail was clear. Duke thinks he owns us. He thinks we're weak, that we'll always bow to him. But we have an advantage: he underestimates us. We use that. We make him believe you're still broken, that I'm playing the obedient wife-to-be. We keep him blind to our moves while we dismantle his empire from the inside. Brittany swallowed hard, her fingers twitching slightly. And if he finds out? If he suspects even for a second? We don't give him the chance. My voice was steel. We move quickly. We hit him where it hurts: his money, his allies, his reputation. We rip him apart before he sees it coming. Brittany was silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. I could see the war waging inside her, the years of fear battling against the flicker of something new: determination. Then she lifted her gaze. And for the first time, I saw it. The fire. The fight. All right, she whispered. Let's burn him to the ground. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave, but there was no time to celebrate. We had to move. Fast. For the next few days, we played our roles perfectly. I acted the part of Duke's devoted companion while Brittany remained hidden, waiting for the right moment to step back into the world she had been ripped from. Meanwhile, Faye worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering evidence, tracking Duke's financial movements, and securing a safe house for when the time came to strike. But then, just as everything was falling into place, something went horribly wrong. One night, as I lay in bed pretending to be asleep, I felt a shift in the air. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. A presence. Someone watching me. I kept my breathing steady, feigning deep slumber, but every muscle in my body was taut with anticipation. Then, just as I was about to move, a hand clamped over my mouth, and a harsh whisper brushed against my ear. "You really thought you could outsmart me?" Duke. A surge of panic coursed through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had expected this. Planned for it. Slowly, I turned to face him, keeping my expression neutral. "What are you talking about?" His eyes gleamed in the darkness, cold and calculating. "You really think I don't see what's happening? The sudden change in attitude, the little secrets you think I don't notice?" He leaned closer, his breath hot against my skin. "I know everything, Mia. Every single thing." My blood turned to ice. I had been careful. We had been careful. But not careful enough. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my voice eerily calm despite the chaos in my mind. Duke smiled, slow and predatory. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough." But first a sharp knock on the door interrupted him, and his expression darkened. He hesitated, then stood abruptly, striding toward the door. I took the opportunity to subtly reach under my pillow, where I had hidden a small blade, my fingers curling around the cool metal. The door creaked open, revealing one of Duke's men. "Sir, we have a problem." Duke growled in frustration. "What now?" The man glanced at me briefly before lowering his voice. "It's Brittany. She's gone." For a split second, everything froze. My pulse roared in my ears. Then Duke turned to me, rage distorting his features. "Where is she?" I didn't have to fake my shock. Brittany had gone off script. This wasn't part of the plan. Duke grabbed me by the throat, his grip tightening. "If you don't tell me where she is, Mia, I swear, you'll wish you were never born." The tension in the room was suffocating. Duke's grip on my arm was ironclad, his eyes burning into mine as he growled, "Tell me where Brittany is, Mia. Now." I clenched my jaw, refusing to answer. My silence only fueled his rage, his fingers digging into my skin. I could see the storm brewing within him, his patience rapidly unraveling. He pulled out his gun and aimed it at me, his hand steady, his intent clear. "If you don't talk, I swear I will make you regret it." Before I could react, the door burst open. Brittany stood there, her face pale but determined, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. "Let her go, Duke. I'm right here." His eyes widened in momentary shock before they darkened again. "Brittany. So you finally decided to show yourself." Lucas, who had been standing near the doorway, froze at the sight of his mother. His brows knitted together, confusion washing over his face as he processed what was happening. But before anyone could say another word, Duke's gun discharged, his finger twitching on the trigger in reflex. The bullet struck Brittany in the side, the sharp crack of the gunshot echoing in the room. She staggered back, a strangled gasp escaping her lips as crimson bloomed against her dress. Lucas' eyes widened in horror as his mother collapsed to the ground. "Noem." Lucas' scream pierced the air as he rushed toward Brittany, his hands shaking as he tried to stop the bleeding. His young mind struggled to process what had just happened. He turned his tear-filled eyes to Duke, his expression twisted with disbelief. You shot her? You shot my mom?" Duke's expression flickered, the weight of what he had done settling over him like a suffocating cloud. He hadn't meant to shoot Brittany. The realization paralyzed him for a split second, just long enough for me to act. I grabbed a glass vase from the table and smashed it against the back of his head. Duke stumbled forward, groaning in pain. "You We have to go. Now. I yelled at Lucas, grabbing Brittany's limp body with all the strength I had left. Faye burst into the room, her face pale as she assessed the situation. Without wasting time, she helped me lift Brittany while Lucas was still frozen in shock. The sound of approaching footsteps sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Duke's men were coming. Move. I screamed at Lucas, jolting him out of his daze. He nodded, quickly wiping his tears before running ahead to open the door. We maneuvered Brittany through the hallways, struggling to keep her steady. Blood dripped from her wound, leaving a trail behind us. She groaned weakly, barely holding on to consciousness. Stay with me, Brittany. Stay awake, I urged desperately. The moment we reached the car, Lucas helped push Brittany into the back seat while Faye jumped into the driver's seat. I barely had time to slam the door shut before Duke's men burst out of the house, guns raised. Go! I screamed. The tires screeched against the pavement as Faye floored the accelerator. Bullets rained down on us, shattering the back windshield. Lucas let out a cry as glass rained over us, shielding Brittany with his small frame. My heart pounded as I ducked down, praying we would make it out alive. Brittany's breathing was shallow, her face losing color. Hang in there, Brittany, just a little longer, I whispered, pressing down on her wound in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. Faye weaved through the streets, skillfully avoiding incoming cars. I know a safe house nearby, she shouted over the chaos. Just hold on. Minutes felt like hours as we sped through the dark streets, sirens wailing in the distance. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on my chest. Duke had crossed a line he could never take back. And Lucas had just witnessed his own father nearly kill his mother. The child was trembling, his fingers clutching Brittany's hand like a lifeline. She's going to be okay, right? He asked, his voice small, broken. I couldn't lie to him. I didn't know if she would make it. But I couldn't let him lose hope either. We won't let anything happen to her. As we neared the safe house, the gravity of what had just unfolded sank in. The war had officially begun. And there was no turning back now. Lucas turned to me, his eyes filled with something new, determination and fury. We have to end this. Dad has to pay. Blood. It was everywhere. On my hands, on the cold marble floor, and soaking into Brittany's pale dress. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder, mixing with the sharp metallic tang of fresh blood. My heart pounded so violently against my ribs that I thought it might burst. Lucas's wails sliced through the suffocating silence like a blade, his tiny hands trembling as he shook Brittany's motionless body. Mama? Wake up. Mama, please. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at Duke, his grip still firm on the smoking gun. His face was eerily blank, but his eyes, those cold, soulless eyes, betrayed something deeper. Regret? Fear? No, it wasn't remorse for Brittany. It was something far more selfish. You shot her, I whispered, my voice barely audible over Lucas's sobs. You were aiming at me, and you shot her instead. Duke's fingers twitched around the handle of the kun before he slowly lowered it, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. She got in the way, he said, his voice flat. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped my lips. She got in the way? That's all you have to say? Brittany coughed, blood dribbling from the corner of her mouth. Me.He, she gasped, her voice so weak, so fragile. I dropped to my knees beside her, pressing down on the wound at her abdomen. The crimson stain spreek beneath my palms, too fast, too much. Don't talk. We're going to get you out of here, okay? Stay with me, Britt. Stay with me. Lucas clutched her other hand, his little face streaked with tears. Mama, please don't go. I'll be good, I promise. I won't be naughty again. Brittany let out a ragged breath, her fingers weakly squeezing Lucas's. My sweet boy, her gaze flickered to me, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Take care of him. No, I choked out, shaking my head furiously. No, they'll take care of him yourself. You're not leaving us, do you hear me? You're not. A firm hand gripped my arm and yanked me up. Duke. His expression had hardened again, as if shaking off the moment of weakness. We need to leave before someone hears the gunshot. I wrenched away from him, fury blazing through my veins. She needs a doctor. She's dead weight now, he snapped. Something inside me snapped too. I swung my fist and landed a solid punch to his jaw. He stumbled back, more out of shock than pain, and I took the opportunity to grab Lucas and pull him close. Brittany let out another cough, and I turned back to her, my mind racing. We had to move her. We had to. A new voice filled the room, cold and sharp. What an interesting turn of events. I froze, my breath catching as another figure stepped into the dimly lit room. Faye. Her dark eyes flickered from Brittany's limp form to Duke's tense stance, then settled on me. So this is how it ends? I couldn't read her tone. Was she mocking? Amused? Angry? But one thing was certain, she hadn't come alone. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her, and more men entered, their guns trained on Duke. For the first time since I had met him, I saw true fear flash in his eyes. You shouldn't have underestimated me, Duke, Faye continued, tilting her head slightly. Did you really think I'd let you walk away after everything? Duke's jaw clenched. You set me up. She smirked. You set yourself up. Chaos erupted. One of Faye's men lunged at Duke, and he retaliated with brutal efficiency, disarming the attacker and using him as a shield. Gunfire exploded in the confined space, making Lucas scream and bury his face in my chest. I shielded him as best as I could while dragging Brittany's weakening body toward cover. We have to get out of here. I shouted at Faye over the gunfire. She tossed me a set of car keys. Take the back exit. I'll handle this. I didn't hesitate. I hoisted Brittany's arm over my shoulder, my muscles screaming under the weight, but I refused to let her go. Lucas's baby, hold on to my shirt and don't let go. He sniffled but nodded, his tiny fingers gripping the fabric tightly. We staggered through the narrow hallway, every step feeling like an eternity. The gunfire grew distant, but my heart didn't stop racing. As we reached the exit, a black SUV was waiting, its engine already running. Lucas scrambled into the back seat as I eased Brittany in beside him. Her breathing was shallow, her skin clammy. Stay with me, Britt. Just a little longer. As I slid into the driver's seat, my hands trembled against the wheel. I barely had time to register what was happening before the back door was wrenched open. Duke. Blood dripped from his forehead, his eyes wild with fury. You're not leaving. Before I could react, he yanked me out of the vehicle, slamming me against the pavement. Pain exploded in my side, but I gritted my teeth and fought back. I clawed, kicked, bit anything to break free. Then a gunshot rang out. For a terrifying moment, I thought I had been hit. But then I saw Duke stagger back, his hand clutching his shoulder. Brittany, pale and weak, had managed to fire a single shot before the gun slipped from her grasp. I took my chance. I shoved Duke back with all my strength and scrambled into the driver's seat. Slamming the door shut, I floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching as we sped away. Lucas sobbed beside Brittany, shaking her shoulder. Mama, you saved us. You're gonna be okay now, right? Right? I didn't have the heart to answer. Brittany's head lolled to the side, her chest barely rising and falling. I pressed harder on the gas, praying we'd make it in time. But deep down, a horrifying thought clawed at my mind. What if we were already too late? Few weeks passed since the chaos that unfolded in that cold, blood-stained room. The air remained thick with tension, each moment stretching into the next with an unbearable weight. Duke had disappeared. His empire, though still standing, was now operating in the shadows, moving with caution. I knew this wasn't over. Brittany was recovering, though the bullet wound had left her weaker than before. Lucas had barely spoken since that night. He was just a child, one who had seen too much, felt too much. His once playful demeanor had faded into something hollow, something I feared would never return. I stayed close to them, never letting my guard down, knowing Duke wasn't the type to run forever. He would come back. He always did. After a week, Faye returned with news. "They're regrouping," she said, setting down a folder filled with surveillance photos. "Duke's still in the city. He's just lying low, waiting." My grip on the chair tightened. "Waiting for what?" Faye exhaled sharply. "For you to make a move. He knows you're planning something." I glanced at Brittany, who was staring at the documents, her face unreadable. She was still weak, but her mind was sharp as ever. "Then we give him what he's waiting for." Her gaze snapped up to mine. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "It's time to end this." The plan unfolded quickly. Faye had connections, people who hated Duke just as much as we did. Over the next few days, we secured weapons, safe houses, and a team willing to fight. Every detail was set in motion. And then, the unexpected happened. One night, Lucas, who had barely spoken in days, suddenly tugged at my sleeve. "Mia," his voice was small, uncertain. I knelt down beside him. "What is it?" He hesitated before whispering, "I heard something, on the phone." My blood ran cold. "Whose phone?" "Duke's." I exchanged a glance with Brittany before turning back to him. "What did you hear, Lucas?" He looked around as if someone might be listening. "He was talking to someone, he said they had a plan, something about a trade." "A trade?" My heart pounded. "Who was he talking to?" Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, but he said your name. He said he'd trade you for something." A cold chill ran through me. Brittany sat up straighter. "We need to move faster. If Duke is planning something, we can't wait." That night, we stormed the first of his safe houses. It was empty, but it was a start. We combed through documents, finding names, locations, pieces of the puzzle slowly coming together. Then, another twist. As we drove back to our safe house, a car suddenly swerved in front of us, forcing us to a stop. My instincts screamed at me this was a setup. Gunshots rang out. Faye slammed on the brakes, and I immediately grabbed Lucas, shielding him as bullets shattered the windows. Brittany ducked beside me, wincing from the sudden movement. "Move. Now." Faye yelled, pushing open the door. We scrambled out, taking cover behind the wreckage. More shots echoed through the night. I grabbed a gun from my belt, scanning the dark streets. Then, I saw him. Duke stood across the street, his gun raised, a smirk on his face. "Come out, Mia," he called. "Let's end this tonight." I gritted my teeth. "Not on your terms." I fired, barely missing him as he ducked behind a car. A shadow moved behind him. Another gunman. More of his men. Then, an explosion. The car beside us erupted into flames, knocking me backward. My ears rang, my vision blurred. "Mia." Brittany's voice was distant, panicked. I forced myself up, grabbing Lucas and pulling him with me. Faye fired back, her expression deadly. "We can't stay here," she shouted. We ran, darting through the alleyways, the sound of gunfire chasing us. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding. And then, a hand yanked me back. "Duke." He grabbed my arm, twisting it behind me, forcing me against the wall. His breath was hot against my ear. "Did you really think you could win?" I struggled, but his grip was iron. "Let me go, Duke." He chuckled. "Oh no, my dear. You see, I finally figured it out. You weren't trying to replace Brittany, you were trying to take everything from me." His words sent a chill through me. "You should have just stayed put, Mia." Now look at you running like a scared little girl. I felt the cold press of a gun against my ribs. Then let her go. Brittany. She stood a few feet away, gun aimed directly at Duke. Duke sneered. You wouldn't dare. Her hands didn't waver. Try me. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then, a shot rang out. Duke staggered back, clutching his side. Brittany headshot him. Run, she yelled. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Lucas, dragging him as we bolted down the alley, Faye covering us. Behind me, I heard Duke's voice pained, furious. This isn't over, Mia. But as I ran, I knew one thing. It was far from over. It had only just begun. A phone in my pocket buzzed. When I pulled it out, a message flashed across the screen from an unknown number. You thought Duke was your biggest problem? Think again. Since that harrowing night, but the echoes of gunfire and the sight of Brittany collapsing onto the cold, hard ground still haunted me. The mansion was no longer a place of luxury, it was a battlefield, and every moment spent within its walls felt like a countdown to destruction. Duke had vanished after the chaos, leaving behind a fractured reality none of us could comprehend. Lucas hadn't spoken much since witnessing the horrifying scene. He clung to my side, his small fingers constantly gripping onto my sleeve as if he feared I'd disappear too. I couldn't blame him. I felt like a ghost in my own body, drifting through the days, trying to hold on to a sliver of normalcy. But normal was a foreign concept now. I explained Lucas everything even though he was too young. I told her that I'm his aunt. Brittany's going to be okay, I whispered to him one night, hoping the words would somehow make it true. But deep down, I wasn't sure. The bullet had struck her in the side, missing anything vital, but the loss of blood and shock had left her weakened. Faye had done everything she could to stabilize her before she was taken to a discreet location for recovery. Then there was Duke. His presence loomed over us like a storm cloud, unpredictable and threatening. I knew he wasn't gone for good. He was waiting, biding his time. And when he returned, he'd be more dangerous than ever. After a few days of agonizing silence, a letter arrived at the estate. There was no name, no return address, just my name scrawled in bold, ominous strokes. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the paper. You think you've won? You think you can outplay me? This is just the beginning. A chill ran down my spine. He was toying with me, making it clear that he wasn't done yet. I clenched the paper tightly, rage simmering beneath my skin. If he wanted a war, he was going to get one. We need to leave, I told Faye that night as we sat in the dimly lit kitchen, our voices hushed but urgent. He's coming back. I can feel it. Faye nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows outside. I've already made arrangements. We're going underground for now. You, Lucas, and Brittany once she's strong enough to travel. I exhaled in relief, but the moment was fleeting. Just as I was about to respond, Lucas let out a startled yelp from the hallway. Mommy! Someone's outside? My heart stopped. Faye and I shot up simultaneously, rushing to the window. The darkened estate grounds were eerily still, but then movement. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim light of the garden. Duke. My breath hitched. He was standing there, dressed in black, his eyes locked onto the window as if he knew we were watching. A sinister smirk tugged at his lips before he raised his hand holding up another letter. What the hell is he doing? Faye hissed, already reaching for the gun she kept strapped beneath the kitchen table. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the windowsill. He was taunting us. Daring me to come out. But before I could react, a second figure appeared behind him. My stomach dropped. Brittany. Weak, pale, barely able to stand but alive. And she was in his grasp. No. I breathed, horror gripping me. No, no, no. Duke turned his head slightly as if he had heard me. Then, with slow precision, he placed the letter on the ground beside him before gripping Brittany's arm tighter and dragging her back into the darkness. My blood ran cold. Faye. I know, she cut in, already loading the gun. We have to move. Now. Lucas whimpered behind me, and I turned, crouching down to meet his wide, terrified eyes. I need you to be strong, okay? My voice was softer now, despite the panic surging through me. We're going to get Brittany back. I promise. He nodded hesitantly, his lip trembling. I don't want to lose you too. My heart clenched. You won't, I swear. Faye and I exchanged a look before she grabbed a set of keys and motioned toward the back exit. I have a car ready. We need to get to my safe house. From there, we'll plan our next move. I took Lucas' hand, my grip firm. Let's go. As we stepped into the night, I stole one last glance at the letter Duke had left behind. It was a message, a challenge. And I was more than ready to accept it. Days had passed since the chaotic night when Brittany was taken, and every moment felt like a ticking bomb in my chest. My body ached from exhaustion, but my mind refused to rest. I had spent hours mapping out every possible plan, but none felt foolproof. Duke was unpredictable, and I knew he wouldn't make this easy for me. Faye and I sat in the dimly lit safe house, poring over maps and surveillance footage. Lucas lay asleep on the couch, his tiny fingers clutching a toy car. He had been quieter these past few days, barely speaking unless spoken to. Guilt gnawed at me. He had just lost his mother in the most horrific way possible, and now, he was stuck in this endless nightmare with me. We need to move, Faye muttered, breaking the silence. I've tracked Duke's men. They're keeping Brittany in one of his private estates by the cliffside. It's heavily guarded. We can't just storm in. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. Then we need a distraction. Something that will force them to scatter. Faye studied me. I know that look, Mia. You're about to do something reckless. Reckless gets results, I countered. We leak fake intel to Duke's enemies. Make them believe he's hiding something valuable in his estate. If they bite, they'll attack first, thinning out his men. That's when we strike. Faye's eyes widened. That's insane. But it could work. I nodded, my fingers trembling slightly. We don't have a choice. We need to get Brittany out before Duke realizes we're on to him. The plan was set in motion within the next few hours. Faye made the necessary calls, spreading the fabricated intel through the right channels. It didn't take long before the news reached the ears of rival organizations who had been itching for an opportunity to take Duke down. 2 nights later, the attack came like a storm. Gunfire echoed in the air as explosions lit up the cliffside estate. From our vantage point, we watched as Duke's men scrambled to defend their territory. It was chaos, exactly what we needed. Now. I whispered harshly to Faye. We moved quickly, navigating through the shadows as we slipped past the outer defenses. Inside, the estate was a war zone. Bodies littered the hallways, the metallic scent of blood thick in the air. I gripped my gun tightly, my heart pounding. I had one goal: get to Brittany before Duke did. We reached the basement entrance, but just as I was about to push the door open, a familiar voice sent chills down my spine. Going somewhere? I spun around, my breath catching in my throat. Duke stood there, his suit stained with blood, his face twisted in a smirk. Behind him were 2 of his guards, guns trained on us. And worst of all, he was holding Brittany by the arm, his fingers digging into her bruised skin. You really thought you could outsmart me, he chuckled darkly. Adorable. Brittany struggled against his grip, her eyes wide with fear. Mia, run. My body went rigid. There was no running. Not now. Duke clicked his tongue. You caused quite a mess, you know? Leaking fake intel, stirring up a war. I have to admit, I underestimated you. He tightened his grip on Brittany, making her whimper. But you still don't get it, do you? You're playing a game you can't win. I raised my gun, aiming it directly at him. Let her go, Duke. He tilted his head, amused. Or what? You'll shoot me? Go ahead, Mia. But remember, I'm the only one who knows where Lucas really belongs. You think that boy is yours? Think again. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Duke's smirk widened. Lucas isn't just my son. He's an heir to something much bigger than you could ever imagine. And once you understand who he really is, you'll wish you never got involved. The room seemed to tilt, my grip on the gun faltering. You're lying. Am I? He taunted. Why don't you ask Faye? I snapped my gaze to Faye, who had gone rigid beside me. My stomach twisted as realization dawned. Faye, what is he talking about? My voice came out in a whisper. She didn't answer. Duke laughed. Oh, this is priceless. You really thought Faye was just your loyal friend? She's been keeping secrets from you, Mia. Big ones. A deafening silence filled the space between us. I turned to Faye, my heart pounding. Tell me he's lying. Faye finally met my eyes, guilt etched all over her face. Mia, A gunshot rang out. For a split second, I thought Duke had fired. But then, his expression shifted from amusement to pure rage. He turned his head, and that's when I saw Lucas standing at the top of the staircase, his tiny hands gripping a gun. His eyes, filled with tears, locked onto mine. Mommy. I want to go home. Everything shattered at once. Duke roared in fury, shoving Brittany aside as he lunged toward Lucas. I didn't think, I just moved. Another shot rang out. Duke staggered back, blood seeping through his suit. But he didn't fall. Not yet. Brittany, her face streaked with tears, pulled me toward the basement door. Mia, we have to go. But my eyes were on Lucas, frozen in place, gun still in his small hands. He was shaking violently, his lips quivering. Mia. Faye screamed. We don't have Tinnel. Duke, still clutching his wound, chuckled darkly. You can run all you want. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot. I turned, grabbing Lucas into my arms before bolting down the stairs, Brittany and Faye right behind me. The moment we reached the basement exit, the entire estate trembled with another explosion. We burst out into the open air just as the building began to collapse behind us. But as we ran towards the waiting car, my mind was still spinning. Duke's words haunted me. His cryptic hints about Lucas. Faye's guilty silence, and worst of all, the terrifying truth that had just unfolded before my eyes. Lucas, my sweet, innocent nephew, had just shot a man. And I didn't know if I could ever undo what had just been done. Chapter 15 Part 2, Gunshot? My nightmare. The gunshot echoed in the cold night air, a sound that sent a violent shudder down my spine. I barely had time to react before Brittany collapsed onto the ground, clutching her stomach, her face twisted in agony. No. Mommy. Lucas shrieked, his tiny hands gripping her bloodied dress as his sobs tore through the suffocating silence. His innocent eyes darted to Duke, wide with shock, betrayal evident in every trembling breath he took. I felt the blood drain from my face. Duke had just shot Brittany. His own wife. His expression flickered between rage and regret, as if he hadn't meant to pull the trigger. But the damage was done. Brittany gasped for air, her fingers trembling as she reached out toward Lucas. Lucas, her voice was weak. Barely above a whisper, but the desperation in her eyes was loud enough to break me. I dropped to my knees beside her, pressing my hands over the wound in a futile attempt to stop the bleeding. My heart pounded, my entire body shaking. Stay with me, Brittany. Stay with us. Duke took a step back, his grip tightening around the gun. His eyes darted between Brittany, Lucas, and me, as if struggling to make sense of what had just happened. You weren't supposed to be here." His voice cracked, raw with frustration and something dangerously close to fear. Lucas lifted his tear-streaked face, his little body shaking as he clung to Brittany. "Why did you hurt Mommy?" His voice was broken, filled with disbelief. Duke's face contorted, his usual confidence replaced with uncertainty. I didn't mean to," he muttered, but his words felt empty. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called for help. Duke's head snapped up, realizing what was happening. He turned to run. But I wasn't going to let him get away. Not this time. I launched myself at him, tackling him to the ground with every ounce of fury I had left. He struggled beneath me, but I clawed at his face, punching, scratching, fighting with the strength of someone who had nothing left to lose. "You're not leaving," I snarled, my nails digging into his skin. "You don't get to just walk away from this." Duke growled, flipping me over with brute force, but before he could gain control, a loud crack filled the air. Brittany had grabbed a fallen wooden beam and smashed it against his head with whatever strength she had left. He collapsed beside me, dazed. Brittany fell back, coughing violently, her hands still clutching her stomach. Her breathing was ragged, but her eyes locked onto mine. "Take Lucas and go, now." "No, we're not leaving you," I cried, but she shook her head weakly. "I'll be fine," she rasped, but we both knew that was a lie. Lucas sobbed, shaking his head. "No. Mommy, come with us." The sirens were getting closer. I swallowed back the lump in my throat and made a split-second decision. I scooped Lucas into my arms, his tiny fingers gripping my shirt as he sobbed against me. "I'll come back for you," I promised Brittany, my voice breaking. "Just hold on." Her lips curled into a weak, knowing smile. "You always were the stubborn one." Then, with one last glance at Duke's unconscious form, I ran, carrying Lucas away from the chaos, from the destruction, from the nightmare that refused to end. The night was suffocatingly silent, the kind that felt unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath for what was about to happen. I clutched the gun tighter in my hands, feeling the weight of it press into my palm. Every muscle in my body was tensed, my heartbeat pounding so loudly in my ears that I barely noticed the sound of the waves crashing against the shore in the distance. After weeks of planning, days of sleepless nights, and hours of relentless pursuit, I was finally here standing outside Duke's heavily guarded estate, ready to bring an end to everything. Brittany was still inside, and I couldn't afford to wait any longer. Every second that passed felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my gut. Lucas shifted beside me, his small fingers gripping the hem of my shirt. He was scared, but he tried to hide it behind those wide, defiant eyes. He had lost his mother once. I refused to let him lose her again. "Aunt, what if something bad happens?" he whispered, his voice barely audible against the wind. I knelt down, cupping his face. "Nothing bad is going to happen, okay? I promise. We're going to get your mommy back. Just stay close to Faye and do exactly as she says." Faye was a few steps away, double-checking the ammunition in her rifle. Her face was set in stone, unreadable, but I knew she felt the same dread crawling up my spine. We had been through hell together, but tonight would determine everything. Suddenly, a movement by the front gate caught my attention. 2 guards were patrolling, their rifles slung lazily over their shoulders. They were too relaxed. They had no idea the storm that was about to hit them. "Now," I whispered. Faye nodded, raising her rifle. In an instant, 2 silenced shots rang out, and both guards crumpled to the ground before they even knew what hit them. We moved swiftly, dragging their bodies into the shadows. The security system was our next obstacle. "I'll disable the cameras," Faye said, crouching beside the control panel. "You take Lucas and find Brittany." I hesitated. "Be careful." She flashed a small, fleeting smirk. "You know me." With Lucas's tiny hand gripping mine, I slipped through the now unlocked gates. The mansion loomed ahead, its towering windows casting eerie reflections under the moonlight. Every step felt heavier, knowing that Duke was inside, waiting. Lurking. The hallways were dimly lit, the air thick with tension. I guided Lucas through the maze like corridors, dodging guards and pressing ourselves against walls when necessary. My breathing was shallow, my pulse erratic. Then, a sound muffled voices from a room at the end of the hallway. I crept forward, pressing my ear against the door. "You think she won't come for you?" Duke's voice was sharp, dripping with arrogance. "She's foolish, just like before, and when she does come, I'll end this game once and for all." Brittany's voice followed, strained but firm. "You underestimate her. She's smarter than you think." My chest tightened. I had heard enough. Kicking the door open, I raised my gun, aiming directly at Duke's head. His eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly, letting out a low, mocking chuckle. "Took you long enough." Brittany was tied to a chair, her face bruised but her spirit unbroken. Her gaze met mine, and despite everything, relief flickered in her eyes. "Step away from her," I commanded, my fingers steady on the trigger. Duke smirked. "Or what? You'll shoot me? You don't have it in you." Before I could respond, a shot rang out, but it wasn't mine. The bullet tore through the air, hitting Brittany in the shoulder. A scream ripped through the room. Lucas gasped beside me, frozen in shock. Duke had shot her. No. I lunged at him, my rage blinding. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it violently. Pain shot up my arm, but fought through it, slamming my knee into his gut. He staggered back, but only for a moment. Then he was on me again, his grip like iron. Brittany groaned from the chair, her breath shallow. Lucas ran to her side, his small hands trembling as he tried to undo the knots binding her. "Hold on, Mommy, please," his voice cracked with fear. I broke free from Duke's hold, using my elbow to smash into his nose. Blood splattered across his face, but he barely reacted, his eyes wild with fury. "You think you can win this," he snarled. "You're nothing but a replacement. You've always been second to Brittany." His words dug deep, but I refused to let them control me. "And yet, here I am," I spat back, delivering a sharp kick to his ribs. Suddenly, the room was filled with the sound of approaching footsteps. "Reinforcements." Faye's voice rang through the calms. "We need to get out, now." I grabbed Brittany, helping her up. Lucas clung to her, tears streaming down his face. Duke wasn't done. He lunged for me again, but this time, I was ready. I pulled the trigger. The bullet hit his leg, sending him crashing to the floor with a guttural cry. "This isn't over," he growled, clutching his wound. "No," I said, gripping Brittany tighter. "It's just beginning." We ran, dodging bullets, weaving through the chaos. The estate was in shambles, Faye taking down guards one by one as we made our escape. The night air hit us like a slap when we finally burst through the gates. But just as we reached the getaway car, an explosion shook the ground beneath us. The mansion was engulfed in flames. And Duke was still inside. Lucas sobbed against Brittany's chest, Brittany barely able to stand. I exhaled sharply, looking back at the inferno that had swallowed our nightmare whole. Was this really the end? Or was Duke still out there, waiting for his revenge? The air in the warehouse was thick with tension, the sharp scent of rust and gasoline mixing into something suffocating. My pulse pounded in my ears as I pressed myself against the cold concrete pillar, my breath. Shallow shadows stretched long under the flickering light bulbs, casting distorted figures along the walls. Jameson stood near the center, his stance casual, but the gleam in his eyes was anything but relaxed. Duke paced a few feet away, his fingers curled into fists. The metallic clink of his watch against his belt buckle was the only sound breaking the silence between us. Lucas clung to Brittany, his small fingers digging into her arm, confusion etched across his innocent face. He didn't understand the weight of what was happening. He couldn't. "You never should have crossed me, Mia," Duke growled, his voice a low, lethal warning. I gave you a chance. I let you live. And this, he gestured wildly, his face contorted with rage. This is how you repay me? I met his glare with steady defiance, my fingers tightening around the gun in my hand. Let me live. You destroyed my life, Duke. You turned me into this. Jameson chuckled, the sound chilling, like ice scraping against glass, and yet, you're still standing here, still trying to fight a battle you've already lost. Brittany's breath hitched. She shifted slightly, placing herself between Lucas and Duke's wrath, her movements subtle but protective. I knew she was terrified, but she wouldn't let it show. Not now. Not when everything was spiraling toward the inevitable. The standoff stretched. Minutes felt like hours, and every shift, every twitch sent my body coiling with readiness. The sound of distant sirens wailed through the air, growing closer, and Duke's expression darkened. You called them? He spat, his gaze burning into me. A sharp laugh left my lips. You think I'm stupid enough to face you without a backup plan? I flicked my gaze toward Jameson. And you, how long have you been working with him? When did you decide to betray me? Jameson sighed dramatically, running a hand through his dark hair. Betray you? Oh, sweetheart, I was never on your side. You were just a means to an end. A tool. Nothing more. Something inside me snapped. I lunged, pulling the trigger before I even registered doing it. The deafening crack of the gunshot echoed in the warehouse, and Jameson staggered back, clutching his shoulder as a crimson stain bloomed across his shirt. His smirk faltered, replaced by a grimace of pain. Duke moved in an instant, drawing his own weapon. Brittany screamed as he aimed at me, and before I could react another shot rang out. Brittany's body jerked, her breath coming in a sharp gasp as she stumbled. My heart stopped. Lucas cried out as she collapsed to the ground, blood seeping through her dress. Duke's eyes widened, as if realizing what he had done only after pulling the trigger. No, Lucas sobbed, shaking her, his tiny hands trembling. Mommy. Wake up. Mommy. A cold fury unlike anything I had ever known overtook me. I didn't think. I just moved. The next shot I fired was at Duke. The bullet hit him square in the chest. His body lurched, his expression twisting with shock as he staggered backward. He fell onto his knees, gasping, his hand pressing against the wound as if he could hold on to the last shreds of his power. I stalked toward him, my vision narrowing. You don't get to win, I hissed, standing over him. Not this time. His lips parted, but whatever he was about to say never came. His body slumped forward, the life leaving his eyes. Silence stretched. Heavy. Deafening. The sirens were upon us now. Red and blue lights flashed through the cracks in the boarded windows. Footsteps pounded against the pavement outside. I dropped to my knees beside Brittany, my hands shaking as I pressed them against her wound. Her breath was shallow, her eyelids fluttering. Stay with me, I pleaded, my voice raw. Stay with me, Brittany. Her fingers weakly curled around mine. Mia, take care of him. Lucas sobbed beside us, burying his face in her arm. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I knew was that I wasn't ready to let her go. The doors burst open. Officers swarmed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. But none of it mattered. All I saw was Brittany's pale face, her blood staining my hands, and the realization that this war wasn't over yet. Not even close. The air was thick with tension, the dimly lit warehouse buzzing with the faint hum of flickering overhead lights. My breath came in short, rapid bursts as I pressed my back against the cold metal pillar, trying to steady my shaking hands. Jameson's voice echoed through the vast space, his tone laced with amusement. You really thought you could outplay me, Mia? After everything? I clenched my fists, swallowing the bitterness crawling up my throat. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of betrayal and manipulation. Jameson had been pulling strings from the very beginning, weaving his web of deceit so intricately that I hadn't seen it until it was too late. A few days had passed since the night Duke lost control. The chaos that followed had sent us all spiraling into a war none of us were prepared for. Brittany was still recovering from her wound, but the fire in her eyes had yet to die out. Lucas clung to her, confused and terrified, and for the first time, I saw Duke truly shaken. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that we had walked straight into Jameson's trap. I shifted, peeking around the corner. Duke was restrained in the middle of the room, blood dripping from his temple as Jameson circled him like a predator toying with its prey. Several armed men flanked him, their fingers twitching near their triggers. Brittany was on the ground a few feet away, groaning as she struggled to move. Faye was nowhere in sight. She had gone ahead to scout the area, but now, an eerie silence suggested something had gone terribly wrong. My heart pounded. I had to act. Now. Why are you doing this? I called out, stepping into the dim light. My voice wavered slightly, but I kept my chin high. You already have everything you wanted. What more could you possibly gain? Jameson smirked, his eyes gleaming with something dark and twisted. Everything I wanted? No, Mia. This was never just about power or revenge. This was about control. You, Duke, Brittany, you were all just pieces in my game. But now, it's time to end it. A gunshot rang out. I barely had time to react before Duke lunged forward, his restraints snapping with a force that sent the guards reeling. He tackled Jameson to the ground, fists colliding with bone in a brutal clash. Brittany scrambled to her feet, grabbing a discarded gun and firing at one of the guards. Chaos erupted around us. I ducked, rolling behind a stack of crates just as another shot whizzed past my ear. My pulse hammered. I needed a weapon, something, anything. My eyes darted around until they landed on a metal pipe half buried under debris. Without hesitation, I grabbed it and turned just in time to see a guard charging at me. With a grunt, I swung. The impact sent shockwaves up my arms, but the guard crumpled to the floor. I barely had time to breathe before another lunged. A blur of movement, Faye appeared from the shadows, a knife flashing in her grip as she slit the man's throat in one swift motion. You took your damn time, she muttered, tossing me a gun. Now fight. The next few moments were a blur of gunfire, fists, and blood. Duke and Jameson grappled violently, slamming into walls and knocking over crates. Brittany was holding her own, but exhaustion was evident in her movements. Faye fought like a demon, her strikes precise and merciless. And me? I was just trying to survive. Then, the unthinkable happened. Jameson, bloody and bruised, reached into his coat. A detonator. If I can't have control, then no one will. His thumb pressed down. A deafening explosion rocked the warehouse. I was thrown backward, my vision blurring as heat and dust filled the air. My ears rang, my body screaming in pain. Distantly, I heard Lucas crying, heard Brittany calling his name. I tried to move, but the weight of debris pinned me down. Through the haze, I saw Jameson stumbling toward an exit. Duke, battered but still standing, lunged after him. More gunfire. A final, gut-wrenching scream. Then silence. I forced myself up, wincing as pain shot through my ribs. The warehouse was collapsing. Smoke billowed from the flames licking at the walls. Brittany had Lucas in her arms, running toward me. We have to go. I searched for Duke. He stood over Jameson's lifeless body, his expression unreadable. Blood dripped from his hands, but he didn't move. Duke. I screamed. He turned, his eyes meeting mine. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't over. Not yet. The world around me seemed to slow as the dust of the chaos settled. The storm had raged, leaving behind scars both seen and unseen. Duke lay on the floor, his body writhing in pain, his breaths shallow. Blood stained his shirt where the bullet had grazed him. The once powerful man, who had controlled my life like a puppeteer, was now at my mercy. Brittany held Lucas close, her tears soaking into his hair as she whispered soothing words to him. He clung to her, sobbing softly, the weight of the horrors he had witnessed pressing on his tiny shoulders. Jameson stood in the corner, his hands still gripping his gun, his face a mask of unreadable emotions. He had been the wild card, an unexpected force in the game that had shifted the entire course of events. His presence had been both a curse and a blessing, a reminder that not everything was as simple as it seemed. After what felt like an eternity, the sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with every second. I exhaled shakily, my mind racing through the events of the past weeks. The revenge, the revelations, the betrayals, it had all built up to this moment. As the police stormed the mansion, weapons raised, I stepped back, allowing them to take control. They secured Duke, forcing him onto his knees as they handcuffed him. His gaze met mine, a mixture of rage and desperation burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he hissed through clenched teeth. I smirked, my chest rising and falling with a newfound sense of victory. "Oh, it is. You lost, Duke. And this time, you won't be able to manipulate your way out." The officers escorted him out, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I inhaled deeply, allowing myself to feel the relief washing over me. Jameson approached me cautiously. "You should get checked out," he murmured, nodding toward my bruised arms and the dried blood on my temple. I let out a dry laugh. "I've been through worse." He studied me for a moment before nodding. "So, what happens now?" I glanced at Brittany and Lucas. "Now, we rebuild. We move forward. And we never let people like Duke ruin our lives again." Days passed in a blur. Brittany and I made arrangements to ensure Lucas's safety, relocating to a secure place where Duke's influence couldn't touch him. I found myself standing at my father's grave, the weight of everything crashing onto me at once. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "He's gone. But why does it still feel like the battle isn't over?" The wind carried my words away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Jameson had stayed close, watching over us even when I insisted I didn't need protection. He was unpredictable, dangerous even, but I couldn't deny the fact that he had saved my life more times than I could count. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he found me standing by the balcony, lost in thought. "You don't trust me," he said, leaning against the railing beside me. I crossed my arms. "Should I?" He chuckled. "Probably not." I turned to him, studying his expression. "Why did you help us, Jameson? You could have stayed out of this. You had no reason to get involved." He hesitated before answering, his voice quieter this time. "Maybe I saw something in you. Something worth protecting." I frowned, unsure of what to say to that. Before I could respond, Brittany called my name from inside the house. Jameson straightened. "I should go." As he walked away, I felt an unsettling sensation in my chest. Something told me this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. The battle was over, but the war? It felt like it had only just begun. Few months had passed since Duke's downfall, and the world had already begun to witness the collapse of his once thriving empire. News outlets flooded their headlines with reports about his illegal dealings, the crimes he had committed in the shadows finally seeing the light of justice. Investigations were launched, assets were frozen, and the board of directors had turned their backs on him, desperate to salvage what was left of the company before it crumbled into nothing. I stood in front of a television in a high-end cafe, sipping my coffee as Elle watched Duke's former executives hold a press conference. Their faces were grim, their voices laced with desperation as they announced their resignation one by one. They knew the company was beyond saving. Investors had pulled out, stocks had plummeted, and no amount of damage control could undo the mess he had created. A sense of satisfaction settled deep within me. Duke had spent years building his empire on the backs of the innocent, manipulating, using, and destroying lives for his own gain. Now, he had nothing. The irony was almost poetic. Faye sat across from me, casually scrolling through her phone. "You should see this," she said, turning the screen toward me. It was a leaked video, one taken from an insider who had managed to record Duke's desperate attempts to flee the country before his arrest. In the footage, he was seen boarding a private jet, only for a swarm of police officers to intercept him before he could take off. He fought, screamed, tried to bribe his way out, but there was no escaping the inevitable. The last thing the camera caught was him being shoved into the back of a police vehicle, his face twisted in pure rage and disbelief. I exhaled slowly, my fingers tightening around my coffee cup. "It's finally over," I murmured. "Almost," Faye corrected. "We still have to deal with what's left of his operations. Just because he's gone doesn't mean his influence disappeared overnight." She had a point. Though Duke was rotting in a prison cell, his connections, his loyalists, and his unfinished business still lingered in the shadows. His fall had created a power vacuum, one that other ruthless figures would be more than eager to fill. Brittany, sitting quietly beside me, finally spoke up. "We can't let another Duke rise from the ashes," she said firmly. "We need to take control of the situation before it spirals out of hand." I nodded. "We will. We'll dismantle every part of his empire, piece by piece. His company, his assets, his network, everything." A few hours later, we were at an undisclosed location, one of the many secret offices Duke had used to run his illegal operations. With the help of some insiders who had turned against him, we managed to obtain critical documents, evidence of fraud, money laundering, and human trafficking operations he had been involved in. "Once we release these, anyone still clinging on to his legacy will go down with him," Faye remarked, scanning the files. "There won't be anything left to rebuild." Just then, my phone rang. It was one of our informants. "Mia, you won't believe this," his voice was urgent. "There's a hidden offshore account, millions of dollars still untouched. If we don't get to it first, someone from Duke's side will." I exchanged a glance with Brittany and Faye. Then we moved fast. The next few days were spent tracking the offshore accounts, ensuring that every last cent Duke had hidden was seized by the authorities. At the same time, we continued exposing the remaining branches of his criminal empire, ensuring that his name would never hold power again. Lucas, now living a peaceful life away from the chaos, remained unaware of the deeper complexities of what had transpired. He was safe, and that was all that mattered. On the night of the final press release, Brittany and I stood on a balcony, overlooking the city. The stars were bright, the air crisp, a stark contrast to the storm we had endured. "Do you think this is really the end?" she asked softly. I exhaled, watching as the last news report of Duke's destruction played on a giant screen in the distance. "It's the beginning of something better." For the first time in a long while, peace didn't feel so far away. I stood at the edge of the chaos, watching as the final pieces of Duke's empire crumbled. The air smelled of burnt wood and metal, a testament to the destruction that had unfolded over the past weeks. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what was to come. Days had passed since Duke's downfall, and yet, the aftershocks of his reign still rippled through the city. I had spent every waking moment ensuring that every trace of his corruption was erased. The people who had suffered under his rule were finally seeing the light of day, but there was still so much to be done. Faye stood beside me, arms crossed, her face unreadable. "So, what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I exhaled slowly, my gaze fixed on the towering remains of Duke's headquarters. "We finish this. His company, his influence, everything he built, it all needs to be dismantled. If we leave any part of it intact, someone else will rise in his place." Lucas clung to Brittany's hand, his eyes darting around nervously. He didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation, but he knew enough to sense the tension. Brittany kneeled beside him, whispering something reassuring in his ear. "I never thought it would come to this," Brittany admitted, looking up at me. "All those years, I thought he was invincible. That no matter what we did, he would always have the upper hand. No one is invincible, I said, meeting her gaze. Not even Duke. He built his empire on fear and lies. And now, he's paying the price for it. The sound of sirens in the distance signaled the arrival of law enforcement. We had provided them with every piece of evidence they needed: documents, recordings, witness testimonies. There was no escaping justice this time. As the officers began securing the area, Jameson approached us. He had been instrumental in exposing Duke's financial crimes, using his expertise to unravel years of hidden transactions. It's done, he said. The government is freezing all of Duke's assets. His company is finished. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by exhaustion. Good, I muttered. That's one less monster in the world. Faye placed a hand on my shoulder. And what about you, Mia? Now that it's over, what will you do? The question hung in the air. I had spent so long fighting, so long running on adrenaline and vengeance, that I hadn't stopped to think about what came next. I looked at Brittany, at Lucas, at the people who had become my family through this ordeal. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in years, I have the freedom to figure it out. Brittany smiled softly. Whatever you decide, you won't have to do it alone. I felt the weight on my shoulders lighten just a little. The war was over. Duke was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I could finally breathe. As we walked away from the remnants of Duke's empire, I realized that this wasn't just an ending. It was a new beginning. And I was ready to embrace it. Epilogue. The world had changed, and so had we. It wasn't an instant shift, but rather a gradual unraveling of the chaos that had once consumed our lives. Now, standing on the balcony of my new home, the salty breeze of the ocean filling my lungs, I finally felt what peace truly meant. Brittany had taken Lucas by the hand, leading him inside with a soft smile. They were safe now, finally free from the shadows of Duke's twisted empire. His reign had crumbled, his company torn apart by scandal and legal charges that buried his name in the depths of history. Justice had been served, but it didn't erase the scars. It didn't bring back the time we had lost. I turned my gaze to my son, Dwayne. Trayson, his little fingers curled around mine. He was my anchor, my reminder of what mattered the most. Despite everything, despite the pain, I had something real to hold on to. Brittany, ever the resilient one, had decided to start over in a different city, one where Lucas could grow up without the haunting memories of his father's sins. It was painful to part ways after everything we had been through, but we knew it was for the best. We had fought too hard for our freedom to let the past define our future. Are you ready? Brittany asked, standing at the doorway with her suitcase in hand. Lucas stood beside her, holding onto a small teddy bear, the same one he had clung to the first time I met him. I nodded. You don't have to leave, you know. She chuckled, shaking her head. We both need this, Mia. A fresh start. You have Dwayne now. And I need to learn how to be a mother to Lucas without the ghosts of the past looming over us. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You'll be an amazing mother. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We had said our goodbyes in 1,000 different ways, in every battle we fought side by side, in every promise we made and kept. As she and Lucas stepped outside, I watched them disappear into the horizon, their silhouettes merging with the golden hues of the setting sun. A chapter closing, another beginning. I held Dwayne close, pressing a kiss to his forehead. It's just us now, buddy. He cooed, his tiny hands reaching for my face, and in that moment, I knew we had one. Not in the way the world measured victory, but in the way that truly mattered. We had survived. We had rebuilt. And now, we were finally free to live. Today's story is over. Thank you all for listening.